Hey there. Tonight we're diving into a topic that'll make you infinitely grateful for that steaming hot shower you enjoyed earlier. Welcome to the bizarre world of Victorian hygiene, a place where top hats and corsets hid realities far less glamorous than they appeared. If you're liking these tales, don't forget to hit like or subscribe. I'm genuinely curious. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It blows my mind imagining listeners drifting off to this across different time zones. All right, get cozy. Take a slow breath. Let your body melt into your mattress. You'll appreciate it even more by the end. Picture this. You wake up in 1850s London. The first thing assaulting your senses isn't the fog or the noise. It's the smell. A thick, oppressive miasma clinging to your throat like a rancid soup of human waste, rotting garbage, coal smoke, and something unnervingly sweet yet rotten. You shift in your bed, if you're lucky enough to have one, and immediately notice the scratchy, rough sheets. Nothing like today's soft cotton. They reek, too. Fabric softener? A century away. Congrats, you're alive in Victorian London. The bad news? Everything else. Let's start with your living situation. If you're poor, like most, you're sharing a 10 by 12-foot room with 6 to 8 others, family or strangers. Privacy be damned. The walls are perpetually damp, corners sprouting mysterious green growth everyone pretends not to see. Middle class? Slightly better. Maybe your own bed, but still no running water or electricity. That modern bathroom you're picturing doesn't exist. Here's the kicker. Victorians believed they were clean. Their definition? Wildly different. That daily hot shower you love? Unthinkable. Victorians thought frequent bathing would kill you, weakening your constitution. Most bathed weekly, if wealthy, or monthly, if poor. Instead, they spot cleaned with sponge baths, face, hands, armpits, and, ahem, the essentials. Picture standing by a wooden stand with a bowl of cold water. Hot water was wizardry, scrubbing like you're detailing a car, except the car is your body, and the detailing is half-hearted. The wealthy had copper tubs filled by servants, but even they reused the same water. Dad first, Mom next, then the kids, until it resembled murky broth. Bathing guides from 1858 read like survival manuals. Don't wash your face while traveling unless you purify water with ammonia. Russian baths involved scalding then freezing your face to prevent wrinkles. Exhausting, right? Now, teeth. Toothbrushes existed, wooden handles with stiff animal hair bristles, but cost a week's groceries. The poor resorted to chewing celery or DIY toothpaste, chalk, soot, or powdered cuttlefish bone. Yes, really. Toothache? Off to the barber blacksmith, who'd yank it out with pliers. No anesthesia, just prayers. Hair washing? An adventure. No shampoo meant cracking eggs on your head. Yolks as cleanser. Rinsing with vinegar, tea, or rum. Wealthy women washed monthly, piling hair into elaborate styles slathered in rancid pomade. Laundry? A nightmare. Stains were treated with chalk, kerosene, milk, or urine, ammonia, you see. The process took all day, so clothes were worn for weeks. And underwear? Most poor wore none. The wealthy had linen undergarments, washed rarely. Women's layered dresses trapped sweat, food smells, and coal smoke, festering until wash day. Now imagine stepping outside. The streets of Victorian London weren't just dirty, they were alive. Not in a poetic way, but in a walking biological hazard way. Picture this. 2 million people crammed together with no garbage collection, no street cleaners, just an open-air dumping ground where everyone tossed their waste right out the window. The result? A putrid cocktail of rotting food, human excrement, and whatever else couldn't be sold or burned. But the real star of this horror show? Chamber pots. Most homes didn't have toilets, so people did their business in pots kept under beds. At night, the night soil men would collect this waste, because the job was too vile for daylight hours. Where did it all go? Straight into the Thames, the same river people drank from. Let that sink in. Victorian London was essentially drinking its own sewage. And then there were the horses, thousands of them, the engines of the city. Each produced 35 pounds of manure daily. When it rained, streets became rivers of brown sludge. When dry, The manure turned to dust that coated lungs like toxic powdered sugar. But here's the twist. After generations of this, people thought it was normal. When everyone stinks, you stop noticing. The wealthy tried masking the stench with perfume, creating a new nightmare. The scent of lavender fighting a losing battle against raw sewage. Picture vanilla air freshener sprayed on a porta-potty. Women's beauty routines were equally hazardous. Lead-laced face powder, mercury rouge, and hair dye with enough toxins to drop a horse. The ideal pale complexion? Achieved by avoiding sunlight or applying literal poison. Medicine was another roll of the dice. Doctors prescribed mercury for everything from syphilis to teething babies. Yes, they doped infants with mercury. Pain relief. Opium. Handed out like candy. Surgery. Performed wide awake, with whiskey as anesthesia. Dentists doubled as blacksmiths, yanking teeth with the same tools they used on horses. Yet through all this, Victorians found pride in appearance. Women spent hours styling hair with beer or sugar water, creating towering, lice-infested wigs. Men risked straight razors for a clean shave, sharing unwashed blades that spread disease. Public baths, where strangers soaked in communal filth, became social hubs because for many, it was the only chance to truly wash. The turning point came in the Great Stink of 1858, when the Thames fermented in a heat wave so vile, Parliament soaked curtains in lime to mute the smell. The crisis birthed Joseph Bazalgette's sewer system, 1,000 miles of tunnels to divert waste. It took years and billions, but when completed, disease rates plummeted. For the first time, Londoners could breathe without gagging. Food in Victorian London wasn't just unappetizing, it was downright dangerous. Forget expiration dates or health inspections. Every meal was a game of Russian roulette with your digestive system. Picture this: meat left to rot at room temperature, milk curdling within hours in summer heat, vegetables fermenting in their own juices. The solution? Enough salt to mummify a pharaoh, or smoking until the food resembled charcoal briquettes. The wealthy weren't safe either. Their luxury foods included potted meat, mystery scraps fermented in fat, and cheese deliberately infested with maggots, considered delicacies. Street vendors sold fly-covered meat pies and bread padded with sawdust. Thirsty? Your choices were cholera-infested water or alcohol. Even children drank small beer because fermentation killed some bacteria. What's truly shocking is how people rationalized the constant food poisoning. Doctors blamed bad air rather than spoiled food. When entire families got sick after dinner, they called it bad luck rather than the obvious. They'd just eaten decomposing meat spiced with enough pepper to mask the rot. The poorest suffered most, shopping at secondhand food markets for nearly spoiled goods. A worker's lunch might be bread eaten while inhaling factory-led dust, or a miner chewing next to piles of coal waste. Kitchen hygiene? Non-existent. The same unwashed knife would cut raw meat then slice bread, spreading bacteria like a culinary serial killer. Yet amidst this culinary horror show, the Victorian palate adapted. People developed iron stomachs capable of processing what would hospitalize modern humans. They guzzled gin to numb the taste of rancid food, and used spices not for flavor, but as biological warfare against decay. The slow rise of food safety laws late in the era marked a turning point. When basic regulations finally emerged, no more sawdust in bread, mandatory meat inspections, it revolutionized public health. Child mortality from digestive diseases plummeted. For the first time, eating wasn't an act of bravery. Let's talk about the invisible revolution that saved millions, the slow, painful birth of modern hygiene. Picture this: a world where doctors finally stopped prescribing mercury for headaches and realized maybe, just maybe, washing hands between delivering babies and handling corpses was a good idea. The 1860s brought germ theory, and with it, the radical notion that diseases weren't caused by bad air or moral failings, but by microscopic organisms you could actually fight. Schools became hygiene battlegrounds. Children learned to scrub their hands like tiny surgeons, bringing these alien concepts home to parents who'd spent lifetimes believing dirt was just part of life's fabric. Public health posters sprouted across cities, their cheerful illustrations of proper toothbrushing techniques hiding a quiet desperation. If only people would listen. Soap companies became unlikely heroes, their advertising campaigns turning cleanliness from eccentricity to social necessity. Suddenly, that rough lye bar wasn't just for laundry. There was rose-scented soap for ladies, pine tar soap for working men, even medicated soap promising to cure everything from acne to melancholia. The middle class embraced twice-weekly baths as a status symbol, their porcelain tubs gleaming like altars to this new religion of sanitation. Hospitals transformed most dramatically. The same institutions where doctors once moved from autopsies to deliveries without washing now gleamed with carbolic acid. Nurses boiled instruments, changed bedding daily, and miracle of miracles, survival rates soared. Florence Nightingale's meticulous ward records proved it. Clean hospitals meant fewer dead soldiers. Yet old prejudices died hard. Many working-class families still viewed frequent washing as a dangerous fad, while the rural poor often lacked access to clean water at all. The wealthy, now obsessed with hygiene, developed new prejudices, judging the poor not just for their poverty, but for their unavoidable grime. The Victorian bathroom revolution didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, messy evolution that mirrored society's changing attitudes. Imagine the shock when the first water closets appeared in wealthy homes, their porcelain bowls gleaming like alien artifacts. These early toilets drained into basement cesspits that would periodically back up, filling entire townhouses with a stench so potent it could peel wallpaper. Servants whispered horror stories of the great overflow of '72, when a Mayfair mansion's cesspool erupted like a geyser of raw sewage during a dinner party. Middle-class families made do with earth closets, wooden boxes filled with ash or soil to supposedly neutralize waste. The reality? A daily battle with flies and odors that no amount of lime powder could conquer. Inventors hawked odorless chamber pots, with elaborate filtering systems, all failures, while the poor still relied on shared outhouses where dozens of families competed for seats crusted with the evidence of previous users. The real game-changer came when engineers finally connected the dots between plumbing and public health. The 1870s saw the rise of enameled cast-iron bathtubs, no longer just for the rich, though many Victorians still feared their debilitating effects. Doctors published alarming pamphlets warning that full-body immersion could cause nervous exhaustion or uterine displacement in women. Yet progress couldn't be stopped. Gas water heaters eliminated the backbreaking labor of hauling kettles, while municipal water systems turned the humble tap into a miracle machine. By the 1890s, the middle classes were adding separate bathing rooms to their homes. Though these early bathrooms often lacked sinks, people still washed hands in bedroom basins. The psychological impact was profound. For the first time in human history, cleanliness became divorced from wealth. A factory worker's wife could now achieve comparable hygiene to a duchess, if she could afford the soap and the time. This democratization of cleanliness created new social tensions, as the upper classes invented ever more elaborate grooming rituals to maintain their distinction. Women's hygiene in Victorian times was a silent battlefield where biology met brutal social stigma. Menstruation? That unmentionable curse, handled with rags washed in secret and dried in dark corners. Wealthier ladies might afford specially sewn cloth pads, but even these were rinsed by servants who'd later gossip about their mistress cycles in the kitchens. Doctors compounded the shame, diagnosing hysteria and prescribing mercury-laced tonics for perfectly normal periods. The contraceptive options were medieval, herbal potions of dubious efficacy, or sheep-gut condoms so thick they might as well have been saddle leather. Pregnancy meant rolling the dice with midwives whose best tools were superstition and dirty hands. Postpartum infections killed thousands, earning the grim nickname childbed fever, until doctors finally realized maybe washing between autopsies and deliveries mattered. Yet Victorian women engineered small rebellions. They turned the ritual of taking to one's rooms during menstruation into a rare chance for solitude. The same society that forced them into corsets also birthed the first whispers of women's healthcare. Lady doctors opening clinics, pamphlets explaining anatomy without moral judgment. Even the hated menstrual rags became tools of quiet resistance when factory girls realized cotton waste from textile mills made superior padding. By the 1890s, the first commercial sanitary napkins appeared, though too expensive for most. The real revolution came from an unlikely source: nurses adapting wood pulp surgical dressings into disposable pads during World War I. Suddenly, women had options beyond monthly bloodstains and the endless, humiliating laundry. It wasn't liberation, but it was a start. One small step in the long march toward bodily autonomy. Children's lives in Victorian England were a paradoxical mix of innocence and unthinkable hardship. Picture this: tiny hands playing hopscotch in streets slick with horse manure and raw sewage, their laughter mingling with the clatter of chamber pots being emptied from upper windows. While wealthy children might have nursemaids and lace-trimmed pinafores, the poor majority wore hand-me-downs stiff with months of grime, their bare feet tough as leather from walking through streets littered with broken glass and rotting food. The nursery was a war zone of well-meaning dangers. Teething infants were dosed with opium-laced, soothing syrups that regularly killed more babies than they helped. Lead-based toys went straight from painted surfaces to mouths, while educational chemistry sets contained actual arsenic. Middle-class children endured daily spoonfuls of cod liver oil, often rancid, while their poorer counterparts gnawed on coal when mineral deficiencies caused pica cravings. Schoolyards revealed stark divides. Ragged school pupils shared single pencils chewed to splinters, while elite boarding schools enforced icy morning baths believed to harden character, a practice that conveniently ignored the pneumonia fatalities. All children, rich or poor, faced corporal punishment with canes that switched between beating backsides and stirring the teacher's tea. Yet through it all, childhood persisted. Little girls fashioned dolls from corn husks and scrap fabric. Boys raced homemade hoops through alleyways, and all treasured rare sweets like gobstoppers passed through dozens of unwashed hands before reaching their mouths. The miracle wasn't that so many children died, though mortality rates were heartbreaking, but that any survived to adulthood at all. The Victorian workplace was a gauntlet of filth and danger that would make modern OSHA inspectors faint. Imagine textile workers breathing air thick with cotton dust that turned lungs to leather, or matchstick girls dipping phosphorus-laced sticks until their jaws rotted away from phossy jaw disease. Even clean professions like clerks battled inky fingers and soot-stiffened collars, their ledgers smudged with the grime of 1,000 unwashed hands. Factories operated on a simple principle: if it couldn't kill you immediately, it was probably safe. Workers in chemical plants handled mercury barehanded, while tanneries employed children to crawl through vats of dog feces and urine used for leather softening. The infamous knocker-uppers had it comparatively easy. Their job of rousing workers at dawn only exposed them to chronic sleep deprivation rather than toxic substances. Lunch breaks were often just minutes spent gnawing bread on the factory floor, swallowing equal parts meal and metal filings. Women in pottery works licked arsenic-based paintbrushes to sharpen points, while coal miners ate sandwiches with hands still blackened by rock dust. The concept of washing up before dinner didn't exist when your workplace lacked even a single basin of clean water. Yet from this cauldron of exploitation emerged the first glimmers of workers' rights. The Matchgirl strike of 1888 proved even the most downtrodden could organize, their phosphorus-ravaged faces becoming symbols of resistance. Slowly, too slowly, regulations crept in, not from employer benevolence, but because dead workers couldn't operate machinery. The legacy of Victorian hygiene lives with us today in ways we rarely appreciate. That innocuous bar of soap in your shower? A direct descendant of the 19th century's public health crusades. The simple act of brushing your teeth with fluoridated toothpaste? A victory hard won from generations of painful extractions and lead-based dentures. Even the most mundane municipal water treatment plant stands as a monument to the Victorians who first grasped that clean water wasn't a luxury, but a human right. Modern cities still rely on sewer systems based on Bazalgette's revolutionary designs, though now hidden beneath layers of concrete and forgotten by those they protect. Our obsession with antibacterial products and daily showers would baffle Victorians, yet their struggles made our standards possible. The irony? In overcoming their public health crises, they created new ones we're only now recognizing. The environmental toll of mass sanitation, the microbiome damage from overcleaning. Perhaps the most profound inheritance is psychological. The Victorian shift from accepting filth to demanding cleanliness rewired our collective consciousness. Today, we instinctively recoil from unwashed hands or questionable food, reflexes forged in the crucible of their suffering. Their battles gifted us the radical notion that no one should die from preventable filth, that governments bear responsibility for public health. As you turn on your tap tonight, watch clean water spiral down a spotless drain. Remember the Londoners who drank sewage and the reformers who changed everything. Their ghosts flow through our pipes, their lessons written in every public health law we take for granted. The true Victorian legacy isn't in their corsets or gaslights, but in their hard-won understanding. Civilization begins with sanitation. The psychological toll of Victorian hygiene conditions left scars deeper than any physical ailment. Imagine the constant, low-grade terror of knowing every sip of water might kill your child. Every piece of meat could spell agonizing death. This existential dread birthed superstitions we'd now find bizarre. Mothers refusing to wash newborns for months. Families drinking turpentine as preventative medicine. The widespread belief that opening windows invited disease-bearing miasmas. The wealthy developed obsessive rituals, inspecting servants' hands for dirt, changing clothes 5 times daily, demanding fresh flowers in every room to purify air. Middle-class housewives waged endless war against dust, their cleaning frenzies often doing more harm than good as they polished furniture with lead-based waxes. The poor, meanwhile, developed a grim fatalism, viewing illness as inevitable as sunrise. This collective trauma manifested in strange ways. The rise of spiritualism coincided with cholera outbreaks, as grieving parents sought contact with dead children. Fashion trends like heavy mourning veils served dual purposes, hiding tear-swollen faces and, unbeknownst to wearers, filtering some airborne filth. Even the era's famous prudery had hygienic roots. Many believed excessive sexual activity weakened the constitution against disease. Yet from this darkness came unexpected light. The constant presence of death made Victorians cherish life with peculiar intensity. Their famous sentimentality, keepsake lockets containing loved ones' hair, post-mortem photography, wasn't morbidity but a raw celebration of survival. The same people who drank sewage water tea also created the world's first public parks, recognizing that beauty was as vital to health as sanitation. The Victorian era's hygiene revolution sparked an unexpected cultural metamorphosis that still shapes our world today. Picture this. The same society that emptied chamber pots into streets also pioneered the world's first public laundromats, where steam-powered machines washed tons of linen weekly, though workers often fainted from the blistering heat and chemical fumes. The contradiction was everywhere. Department stores installed lavish public toilets to attract genteel shoppers, while their basement workshops remained cesspits of child labor. This duality birthed our modern consumer culture. The first mass-produced toilet soaps were marketed with racist caricatures of dirty savages, playing on fears of social regression. Beauty companies sold arsenic complexion wafers right beside hygienic cosmetics, capitalizing on the newly medicalized obsession with cleanliness. Even children's board games like the Hygiene game taught that moral virtue literally smelled like lavender soap. The entertainment industry quickly monetized these anxieties. Music halls featured comic songs about bumbling bathhouse attendants, while penny dreadfuls warned of germ monsters lurking in unwashed corners. The most popular theatrical melodramas often climaxed with the villain's poetic justice, a typhoid death from drinking contaminated water, or smallpox contracted through moral filth. Yet this commercial exploitation also drove real progress. The same advertising that fearmongered about body odor funded public drinking fountains. Patent medicine quacks inadvertently popularized real science through their pamphlets. Even the infamous toilet soap opera radio dramas of the 1890s, sponsored by soap companies, helped normalize daily washing routines across class lines. The twilight of the Victorian era witnessed a quiet revolution in domestic architecture that permanently altered human living spaces. Middle-class homes began featuring a radical new room called the bathroom, no longer just a tin tub by the kitchen stove, but a dedicated sanctuary with proper plumbing. These early bathrooms became status symbols, their porcelain fixtures gleaming like medical equipment in a bizarre temple of cleanliness. Household manuals from the 1890s read like scientific treatises, prescribing exact temperatures for bathwater and stern warnings about microbe havens in damp towels. The wealthiest installed elaborate needle showers that sprayed bathers from all angles, though many still feared the shock to their systems. Servants now had new duties, scrubbing tile grout with toothbrushes, polishing chrome faucets until they mirrored their employers' rising hygiene standards. Yet this transformation came at a cost. The same homes boasting modern bathrooms often had kitchens where food still spoiled in pantries, and nurseries where lead paint peeled into children's mouths. Landlords converted crumbling slums into model dwellings, with shared bathing facilities, charging higher rents for what was essentially access to cold water and a sliver of soap. The greatest irony? Just as Victorians perfected domestic hygiene, scientists discovered many of their rituals were pointless or harmful. The daily enemas favored by health enthusiasts? Useless. The carbolic acid sprays used to disinfect drawing rooms? Actually poisoning families. Their hard-won cleanliness standards had outpaced actual medical knowledge, creating new neuroses even as they solved old problems. The final years of Queen Victoria's reign saw hygiene evolve from personal practice to political movement. Progressive reformers armed with germ theory stormed Parliament, brandishing water samples teeming with typhoid bacteria as their weapons. Municipal sanitary inspectors became unlikely revolutionaries, their daily rounds exposing squalor that crossed class lines, discovering aristocrats' townhouses often had worse drainage than working-class tenements. This new public health crusade birthed unexpected innovations. Fire hydrants doubled as communal showers in summer months, while public baths transformed into ornate wash houses with marble columns and stained glass. Even prisons installed showers, not for inmate welfare, but because guards complained the stench interfered with interrogation. The most radical idea? That clean water should be free. A concept that terrified water companies relying on exorbitant rates from the poor. Yet resistance remained fierce. Taxpayers revolted against sewer construction costs, doctors clung to miasma theory, and clergymen preached that disease was God's punishment for impurity, conveniently ignoring their own typhoid outbreaks. The breakthrough came when reformers framed hygiene as patriotic. A dirty Britain couldn't maintain its empire. By 1901, even rural schools had hygiene corners, with toothbrush drills and hand-washing hymns. The ultimate Victorian legacy wasn't just pipes and soap, but the revolutionary idea that cleanliness wasn't about moral virtue. It was about justice. Their battles gifted us the profound understanding that no one should die because they couldn't afford to wash, that public health is the foundation of true civilization. As your shower steam fogs the mirror tonight, remember, that warm water is democracy in liquid form. The Victorian hygiene revolution's most enduring paradox was how it redefined human intimacy. In a world where most had never been truly clean, the sudden possibility of bodily freshness created new social codes and anxieties. Middle-class couples now hesitated before embraces, hyper-aware of lingering sweat or bad breath. The rise of perfumed toilet waters wasn't just about scent. It was armor against the terrifying vulnerability of being smelled. Bathing became a transgressive act of self-discovery. For the first time, people saw their own unclothed bodies clearly in full-length mirrors, free from layers of grime. This sparked both body positivity and new insecurities. Women fretted over pores suddenly visible, men over muscles that didn't match classical statues. The same society that covered piano legs for modesty now sold anatomical soap, molded into naked forms. Physical closeness took on dangerous new dimensions. Doctors warned against overwashed skin losing its natural protection, while etiquette books dictated how many hours must pass after bathing before receiving guests. The handshake crisis of 1897 captured the era's tension. Businessmen demanded clean palms, but recoiled from the sissy notion of carrying handkerchiefs. Yet from this awkward transition emerged something beautiful, the radical notion that cleanliness could be sensual. Perfume advertisements hinted that floral scents might attract suitors, while Turkish bathhouses became clandestine meeting spots. The greatest irony? Victorians, who began the era smelling like walking cesspools, ultimately invented the very concept of freshness we now chase with designer deodorants and mini mouthwashes. The Victorian hygiene revolution's final act unfolded in the unlikeliest of places, the human mouth. For centuries, dental care had been little more than whiskey and pliers, but by the 1890s, a perfect storm of technology and terror birthed modern dentistry. The same society that once viewed tooth decay as gods will now endured screaming advertisements showing the march of decay, grotesque illustrations of gums receding like battlefronts. Middle-class families began the peculiar ritual of toothbrush drills, where children practiced circular brushing motions on diagrams of teeth. Apothecaries sold dentifrice, powders containing everything from crushed coral to radioactive thorium, guaranteed to energize enamel. The most popular item? Tooth soap, actual soap blocks carved into tooth shapes, tasting like lavender-scented lies. The real game-changer came when dentists stopped being barbers who dabbled in extractions. Proper dental schools emerged, though early students practiced on cadavers with tools closer to watchmakers' implements than medical instruments. The first anesthesia machines looked like torture devices, but represented a quantum leap from the bite this leather strap era. Yet old habits died hard. Many still believed tooth loss was inevitable, that good teeth were a genetic lottery. It took army recruiters rejecting recruits with fewer than 6 teeth to shock the public into prevention. By Victoria's death in 1901, the toothpaste tube had been invented, fluoride discovered, and the smile, that most intimate of gestures, was becoming a public health priority rather than something to hide behind handkerchiefs. The Victorian obsession with cleanliness spawned an unlikely architectural revolution that transformed city skylines. Water towers, those once utilitarian structures, became ornate cast-iron showpieces crowned with gilded weather vanes, monuments to municipal hygiene. Beneath the streets, sewers expanded into cathedral-like tunnels where inspectors rowed boats through brick arches, their lanterns glinting off walls scrubbed by armies of flushers wielding high-pressure hoses. Private homes underwent radical reinventions. The wealthy installed sanitary galleries, glass-roofed corridors where sunlight could purify clothing between wearings. Middle-class parlors featured hygienic wallpaper infused with zinc oxide to supposedly kill germs, while kitchens boasted ventilating ranges that promised to suck cooking smell straight to hell. Even cemeteries were redesigned with drainage systems to prevent corpse vapors from polluting neighborhoods. Yet these innovations often created new problems. The same water towers that delivered clean water also bred legions of pigeons whose droppings contaminated rooftops. Those beautiful underground sewers became nesting grounds for rats that carried new diseases into homes through shiny modern plumbing. The era's greatest irony? Their solutions frequently became vectors for the very filth they sought to eliminate. By century's end, a new aesthetic emerged, the hygienic style of white tiles, chrome fixtures, and washable surfaces that still defines hospitals and labs today. What began as practical necessity had become an art form, transforming the battle against dirt into something approaching reverence. The psychological impact of Victorian hygiene reforms revealed itself most profoundly in changing attitudes toward childhood. Where parents once accepted infant mortality with grim resignation, the new generation of mothers now boiled feeding bottles with military precision. The humble baby's bath became a ritualistic ceremony, complete with thermometers, special soaps, and timers to prevent over-softening of the moral fiber through excessive cleanliness. Nursery design underwent a radical transformation. Gone were the dark, stuffy rooms of earlier decades, replaced by hygienic nurseries featuring white-painted walls, steam-sterilized toys, and wire mesh germ screens on windows. Pediatricians published alarming charts showing how dust particles could lodge in developing lungs, turning middle-class mothers into obsessive dust hunters armed with damp cloths and paranoid scrutiny. Yet this new cleanliness dogma created its own casualties. The working poor, unable to meet these rising standards, faced increasing stigma. Charity workers would inspect tenement homes, condemning mothers as filthy when their only crime was lacking hot water. Children scrubbed raw with lye soap developed skin conditions, while obsessive avoidance of dirty playmates stunted social development. The cure sometimes proved worse than the disease it sought to prevent. By the 1890s, a backlash emerged. Reformers advocated for rational dirt, allowing children controlled exposure to build immunity. Sandpits appeared in progressive kindergartens, while doctors cautiously endorsed mud pies as nature's vaccine. The Victorian hygiene revolution had come full circle, from fatalistic acceptance of filth through obsessive cleanliness to a hard-won balance between sanitation and sanity. The Victorian era's most unexpected legacy lies beneath our fingernails, in the microscopic world they first attempted to conquer. When scientists finally revealed the teeming universe of microbes, it sparked both terror and wonder. Middle-class families installed microscopic parlors, where they gawked at magnified dust mites, simultaneously fascinated and horrified by the life forms they'd been inhaling for centuries. This new visibility transformed daily rituals in bizarre ways. The wealthy carried germ lenses, ornate magnifiers to inspect dinnerware for suspicious spots. Housewives preserved specimen slides of their home's dust to compare cleanliness with neighbors. A peculiar status symbol emerged. Families who could afford weekly bacteriological audits from traveling scientists wielding primitive petri dishes. The working classes adapted differently. Factories posted giant microscope drawings of workplace filth, turning abstract germs into tangible enemies. Children played germ tag, where the infected wore red armbands, unknowingly learning epidemiology through play. Public health crusaders staged living microscope shows in town squares, projecting magnified pond water onto sheets to shock communities into demanding cleaner reservoirs. Yet this microbial mania had dark consequences. The same science that justified sanitation also fueled racist hygiene laws and cruel quarantines. Some doctors prescribed mercury to disinfect from within, while others refused to treat dirty patients. The greatest irony? In their war against microbes, Victorians often did more harm to themselves than the germs ever could, but they also laid the foundation for modern medicine's greatest triumphs. The dying gasps of Victorian England witnessed a peculiar phenomenon, the rise of hygiene tourism. Wealthy hypochondriacs embarked on grand tours of Europe's newest sanitation marvels, marveling at Hamburg's steam-powered sewage pumps and Paris's zinc-lined public urinals. Spas that once peddled dubious mineral waters rebranded as sanatoriums, their bubbling springs now touted as nature's disinfectant. Middle-class families flocked to seaside resorts where the new science of thalassotherapy promised that salt water could purge impurities. Children built sandcastles under doctors' orders, as pediatricians declared beach air contained ozone molecules that scrubbed lungs clean. The most fashionable carried hygiene passports, documenting their visits to model hospitals and water treatment plants. Yet this sanitized wanderlust had its dark side. Guidebooks warned against unwashed Mediterranean countries, fueling nationalist prejudices. Luggage companies sold portable sanitary kits with folding rubber bathtubs and mercury-based food washers. The ultimate status symbol? A custom-made traveling bacteriological lab small enough to fit in a steamer trunk for testing foreign hotel bedsheets. By 1900, even the working class could enjoy hygiene excursions, day trips to newly built reservoirs or sewage farms, where families picnicked while marveling at engineering triumphs over filth. These outings represented something profound, the democratization of cleanliness as both aspiration and entertainment. The twilight of the Victorian era saw hygiene transcend practicality to become a philosophical movement. Social reformers began framing cleanliness not just as medical necessity, but as fundamental human dignity. The same scientists who once dissected sewage now penned poetic manifestos about the morality of soap, arguing that access to basic sanitation was a natural right surpassing class or wealth. This ideological shift birthed radical experiments. Utopian communities sprang up where members bathed communally as spiritual practice. Anarchist groups established hygiene libraries, offering free toothbrushes with political tracts. Even the suffragette movement adopted hygiene rhetoric, with pamphlets arguing voting rights and clean water were two sides of the same democratic coin. The establishment fought back fiercely. Clergymen denounced hygiene fanatics for undermining God's will, while industrialists claimed workers wasted company time washing hands. The most bizarre resistance came from anti-germ societies, who believed bacteria were divine creations that shouldn't be disturbed. Their members proudly displayed mold collections in home shrines. Yet the tide couldn't be stopped. By Queen Victoria's death in 1901, the unthinkable had happened. Parliament debated making free public baths compulsory in every municipality. The Victorian hygiene revolution's final gift was this: the revolutionary idea that cleanliness wasn't about smelling nice, but about justice, equality, and what it means to be fully human in an interconnected world. The Victorian hygiene revolution's most unexpected battlefield was the human soul itself. Religious leaders found themselves scrambling to reconcile centuries-old theology with germ theory's revelations. Some churches installed holy water filters, while others preached that bacteria were God's smallest test of faith. The most desperate compromise? Sanitary sermons, where priests blessed carbolic acid sprays alongside baptismal fonts. This spiritual crisis birthed peculiar new rituals. Wealthy families held hygiene confirmations, where teenagers pledged allegiance to toothbrushes and soap. Middle-class households displayed their boiled Sunday dinner utensils like sacramental objects. The working poor, meanwhile, developed folk traditions, hanging garlic to purify air or placing mirrors facing doorways to reflect away germs brought by visitors. The medical establishment capitalized on this confusion. Quack, hygiene evangelists, traveled the countryside with magic lantern shows, demonstrating how prayer could never reach places scrubbed by their patented brushes. Patent medicine ads featured angels holding toothpaste tubes, implying divine endorsement. Even children's hymns were rewritten with lyrics about washing away sin and streptococcus. Yet from this turmoil emerged something profound. The old notion that disease reflected moral failing slowly crumbled. As baths replaced bloodletting and sanitation displaced superstition, people began viewing health not as celestial judgment, but as human responsibility, the most radical spiritual idea of the industrial age. The final chapter of Victorian hygiene history unfolded in the most intimate of spaces, the marital bed. As germ theory took hold, the Marriage Act itself became subject to sanitary scrutiny. Doctors published alarming charts showing microbial exchange rates during intimacy, while moral reformers distributed pamphlets warning that unwashed passion could poison future offspring. Wealthy couples adopted bizarre new rituals. Separate hygienic dressing rooms allowed spouses to scrub with carbolic soap before conjugal visits. The truly paranoid installed marriage baths, side-by-side tubs where couples could simultaneously cleanse while maintaining modest separation. Middle-class brides received sanitary trousseaux containing sterilized nightgowns and vaginal douching equipment, turning the honeymoon into something resembling a medical procedure. The working class adapted differently. Public bathhouses began offering couples hours, though many opted for the traditional Saturday night wash, a single shared basin of water becoming both prelude and conclusion to marital relations. Birth control methods became entangled with hygiene concerns, with pharmacists advertising spermicidal douches as feminine hygiene products. This sanitization of intimacy had unintended consequences. The same science that pathologized natural bodily functions also quietly empowered women to assert control over reproductive health. By medicalizing the bedroom, Victorians inadvertently laid groundwork for 20th century sexual revolutions, proving once again that their solutions always contained seeds of the next social transformation. The Victorian hygiene revolution reached its logical conclusion in the most unexpected place, the grave. As germ theory took hold, traditional burial practices came under scientific scrutiny. The same society that once held romantic graveyard picnics now demanded sanitary cemeteries, with concrete-lined vaults and regulated burial depths. Embalming, once reserved for medical specimens, became a middle-class status symbol, with families displaying deceased loved ones in hygienic viewing parlors, featuring zinc cooling tables and formaldehyde air filters. Wealthy Victorians pioneered bizarre new traditions. Some installed glass viewing panels and coffin lids so mourners could verify the body's sanitary condition. Others opted for hygienic cremation in specially designed furnaces that promised complete microbial annihilation. The most extreme commissioned self-sterilizing mausoleums with built-in carbolic acid spray systems. The working class faced grimmer realities. Overcrowded paupers' graves became political flashpoints when studies showed they contaminated groundwater. Children's burial clubs now included sanitation riders, guaranteeing disinfected corpses. The ultimate indignity? Dissecting room scholarships, where poor families donated relatives' bodies to medical schools in exchange for a proper disinfected burial later. Yet this morbid obsession yielded unexpected benefits. Cemetery reform forced municipalities to improve water systems, while pathological studies of corpses advanced medical knowledge. The Victorians' relentless pursuit of cleanliness didn't stop at death's door. They sanitized the afterlife itself, leaving future generations safer in ways they could never have imagined. The Victorian hygiene revolution's ultimate legacy lies not in pipes or soap, but in the profound psychological shift it created, the birth of modern selfhood. For the first time in history, ordinary people could experience their bodies as private domains rather than public nuisances. That simple evening bath became a revolutionary act, a daily reclamation of personal sovereignty from the collective filth of centuries. This new bodily autonomy manifested in unexpected ways. The same working-class women who once shared beds with strangers now guarded their weekly basin baths as sacred rituals. Middle-class men discovered shaving could be a private meditation rather than a barbershop spectacle. Even children developed unprecedented bodily awareness, their cleanliness charts, and toothbrush drills fostering a sense of individual responsibility foreign to previous generations. The wealthy, ironically, struggled most with this transition. Their armies of servants made true privacy impossible. What good was a porcelain tub when a maid stood ready to scrub your back? Some rebelled by building solitary bathing towers, while others took to midnight sponge baths like illicit lovers stealing moments of intimacy with themselves. Yet this hard-won selfhood came at a cost. The very isolation that protected bodies also eroded community bonds. Neighborhood bathhouses closed as home plumbing spread, taking with them the gossip and camaraderie of shared washing. That peculiar Victorian invention, the bathroom lock, symbolized the era's great trade-off. sanitary independence gained, communal intimacy lost. The Victorian hygiene revolution's final irony was how it transformed time itself. Where once life moved to the rhythms of seasons and sun, now factory whistles synchronized with municipal water schedules. The bath night carved rigid temporal divisions, Tuesday for hair washing, Friday for laundry, creating the modern tyranny of the hygiene calendar. This temporal shift birthed peculiar new social anxieties. Dinner parties revolved around the host's plumbing capacity, with invitations specifying water hours. The middle-class bath diary became a status symbol, its meticulous entries proving one's dedication to the new temporal order. Even children's lives were regimented by hygiene clocks, 7:15 for toothbrushing, 7:30 for ear inspection. The wealthy attempted to resist through extravagant displays of temporal independence. Some installed multiple boilers to bathe out of schedule, while others threw hygiene defiance parties featuring unwashed grapes and deliberately stained napkins. The working class, meanwhile, developed stealth washing techniques, quick sponge baths during factory breaks, tooth scrubbing in pub alleys. Yet this temporal revolution's greatest legacy was invisible, the neurological rewiring that made clean synonymous with good. Our modern obsession with morning showers and bedtime routines. Those neural pathways were forged in Victorian bathrooms, their porcelain altars teaching us to measure our worth in scrubbed minutes and disinfected hours. The Victorian hygiene revolution reached its poetic conclusion in a most unexpected place, the humble handkerchief. Once a simple snot rag shared by entire families, it became a linen battlefield where social classes waged silent warfare. The wealthy flaunted monogrammed silk squares perfumed with French lavender, while the middle class starched cotton ones into crisp white origami to display in breast pockets like hygiene credentials. This fabric revolution spawned bizarre new etiquette. A gentleman's worth was judged by how often he changed his handkerchief, 6 times daily being optimal, while ladies used elaborate folding techniques to signal availability. A corner peeking from a sleeve might indicate openness to courtship, provided the suitor's own handkerchief passed inspection. Special handkerchief balls became the rage, where dancers changed partners each time a new square was drawn from decorative dispensers. The working class adapted with typical ingenuity. Factory girls turned scrap fabric into penny handkerchiefs, selling them to co-workers for a farthing each. Street urchins developed an entire economy around lost handkerchiefs, washing and reselling them from secret snot alley laundries. Even criminals got creative, using stolen handkerchiefs to leave false trails of respectable scent when fleeing crime scenes. Yet this seemingly trivial accessory marked a profound shift, the moment personal hygiene became portable, democratized, and above all, performative. That delicate square of fabric carried the weight of an entire civilization's obsession, a flag planted firmly on the borders of the newly sanitized self. The Victorian pursuit of cleanliness reached its most absurd zenith in the Domestic Sanitation Exhibition of 1893, where housewives competed to create the most sterile home environments. Contestants lived for weeks in glass display houses, scrubbing invisible germs before rapt audiences. The winning entry featured a kitchen where every utensil hung on magnetized hooks to avoid contaminating drawer contact, and children wore gauze veils to filter exhaled microbes. This spectacle sparked a nationwide obsession with competitive cleaning. Middle-class neighborhoods held hygiene duels, where women raced to whiten identical sheets. Factories pitted floors against each other in sanitation showdowns, with workers scrubbing machinery until their hands bled. Even prisons instituted cleanest cell contests, though inmates quickly learned to hide dirt in ingenious compartments rather than actually clean. The wealthy turned hygiene into performance art. Hostesses staged sterile suppers, where courses arrived sealed in glass domes, to be unveiled with surgical precision. One notorious aristocrat installed an operating theater-style viewing gallery above his bathroom, inviting guests to observe his scientifically perfect ablutions. Yet beneath this madness lay a profound truth. The revolution had succeeded too well. Having conquered actual filth, Victorians now battled phantom dirt, inventing ever more elaborate rituals to fill the hygienic void. Their greatest legacy wasn't the germs they eliminated, but the neuroses they created for modern generations to inherit. The Victorian hygiene revolution's most enduring monument isn't made of brick or iron, but of flesh and bone, the human hand. Once considered merely utilitarian, hands became the ultimate status symbol in the late 19th century. The wealthy cultivated hygienic hands, with milk baths and lemon rubs, their soft whiteness proving they'd never done manual labor. Middle-class office workers practiced penmanship hygiene, believing clean hands produced morally superior handwriting. This obsession birthed bizarre new industries. Hand model became a legitimate profession, with individuals insured for thousands against even minor blemishes. Department stores installed hand inspection stations, where shoppers could compare their cleanliness to wax models of ideal hands. The most extreme enthusiasts submitted to weekly hand portraits, photographs documenting their progress toward hygienic perfection. The working class developed their own hand lore. Factory girls invented elaborate glove-cleaning rituals to mask workday grime. Dock workers took pride in honest dirt, carefully maintained stains that proved their trade skills. Even criminals adapted, with pickpockets training to keep their stealing hands immaculate while leaving their decoy hands conspicuously dirty. Yet this fixation had unexpected benefits. The first occupational health laws emerged from studies of workers' hands, their cracked skin and embedded toxins proving industrial hazards. That simple act of washing hands, once considered eccentric, became the thin white line between civilization and chaos. When we instinctively judge others by their nails today, we're channeling the Victorians' most visceral legacy. The final, unexpected casualty of the Victorian hygiene revolution was silence itself. Where homes had once been filled with the comfortable sounds of shared living, coughs, snores, the rustle of unwashed linens, now reigned an eerie quiet punctuated only by the hiss of steam sterilizers and the scrubbing of bristle brushes. The well-ordered household became an acoustic nightmare of ticking hygiene clocks and the muffled screams of children being scrubbed raw with lye soap. This new sonic landscape spawned peculiar anxieties. Doctors warned against hygienic tinnitus, a condition where patients hallucinated germ noises in spotless rooms. Middle-class families installed sanitary doorbells that played recordings of coughing to test visitors' reactions. The wealthy held silent suppers, where cutlery was sterilized between courses, creating unnatural pauses in conversation that frayed nerves. The working class adapted differently. Factories played hygiene waltzes to time hand-washing breaks, while pubgoers developed a complex system of cough-based communication, a tubercular Morse code of sorts. Street vendors sold dirty whistles that imitated the sounds of pre-hygienic life, giving clean freaks something to nostalgically recoil from. Yet this war on sound had unintended benefits. The same obsession that created sterile silences also gave us modern soundproofing, originally developed to contain the noise of water pumps and flushing toilets. The Victorians, in their quest to quiet the bodily functions they'd so recently embraced as natural, accidentally invented the acoustic privacy we now take for granted. The Victorian hygiene revolution's most paradoxical legacy was its ultimate failure, and why that failure became its greatest triumph. For all their scrubbing and sanitizing, Victorians never achieved true cleanliness by modern standards. Their carbolic soaps burned skin without killing germs, their filtered water still teemed with pathogens, and their beloved white linens were often bleached with toxic chemicals far more dangerous than the dirt they removed. Yet in this glorious failure lay their real success. By striving for an impossible ideal, they created something far more valuable, the very concept of public health. The overflowing cemeteries and stinking rivers of early Victorian England had seemed like eternal facts of nature. That people could look at centuries of filth and say this need not be, was the true revolution, one that echoes every time we expect clean water from taps or antiseptics in hospitals. Their story holds an urgent lesson for our age of antimicrobial resistance and climate crisis. Like the Victorians, we face invisible threats that demand radical rethinking of daily life. Their solutions were often comically wrong, but their willingness to completely reimagine civilization's basics was profoundly right. When future historians study our era's great challenges, they may well judge us not by our perfect answers, but by our Victorian-like audacity to believe things could be different. So tonight, as you brush your teeth with fluoridated toothpaste and wash your hands with antibacterial soap, spare a thought for those misguided, brilliant Victorians. Their war on dirt was messy, contradictory, and frequently absurd, just like all human progress. And that's exactly why it worked.